This video is brought to you by Against the Flow of Mississippi. Against the Flow of Mississippi is a book about Jake Fayard, a Marine veteran who is unhappy with the political machine running the state of Mississippi. He decides to fight the corruption from the inside. Jake will face more challenges than he ever has and will stand up for what he thinks is right. His notoriously hot temper will push him to the edge of murder, along with his friend and brother Kobe Barhanovich. Together, they will fight the system and give the power back to the citizens of Mississippi. Against the Flow of Mississippi is now available on Amazon. A link to the book will be placed in the description below. Welcome to History in the Eyes of a Southerner with your host, Anthony Allen. On this channel, we will take a journey through time and relate history to the contemporary eyes of modern America. I hope you enjoy the ride as I investigate and document the wonderful events that have shaped our present world.
All right, y'all. Good morning. So, I want to talk about something that a lot of unionist historians don't want to mention. A few days ago was the anniversary, 158th anniversary of the Ebenezer Creek Massacre, which happened December 9th, 1864 at Ebenezer Creek, Georgia. This was during Sherman's March to the Sea. Many of y'all know that, General Sherman and General Grant had devised this plan in a hotel room in Ohio that they were going to fight the war hard on two fronts and basically try to wear the South down. And it was a good strategy, except the fact that Sherman came out of it, in my opinion, committing war crimes that are just, I don't know, even in those days, how they were accepted, even by the Union Army, who by this time had been fighting a war for really about 3 years, almost 4 years into the war at this point. So I understand that, hey, we got to get this war to an end. We have to do everything in our power to make sure that, we can stop sending our northern boys to go south to die, basically. It was fastly losing popularity. A lot of the northern mothers were tired of sending their kids to be pressed in and be drafted into service to fight for something that they actually for a minute there thought that the North was a lost cause. There were riots in the street in New York over things like over a draft. The war was actually not that popular by this time. So Sherman had a plan. He was going to go basically dig himself into a hole and pop out on the other end. Nobody knew where he was going or what he was doing. And he started off in Atlanta. And he took a census map of the state of Georgia, so he knew exactly what counties he was going to go through, what counties were yielding the most crops. He would send out his foragers to go flanking on either side. And what he was trying to do was he was actually trying to keep his army moving and keep his army fed. Well, while he is doing this and, scaring the hell out of everybody in the South, and his foragers, his bummers, as they were called, were committing war crimes against Southern civilian and the Southern civilian population, stealing from farms and, just mistreating people, burning not just military targets, but they burnt quite a bit else. I know the order was to burn all military-style stores and any materials that could be used for the war effort against the North. But there were other things, too. Well, what else was going on was these slaves were actually joining the march. They were jamming up the rear of the lines. And I mean, just hundreds and hundreds of now former slaves. And, General Sherman, or Uncle Billy as he was known to his troops, believe it or not, he actually wasn't even against slavery. He was not a friend of these ex-slaves. He did what he was told because he was a soldier and he was going to follow orders. But I don't think Sherman gave a single care about any of these now former slaves that were jamming up the rear of his lines. Well, of course, it's getting around December now. Crops are, in the South here, we have a pretty good growing season, but, still getting close to wintertime. Crops are not as plentiful as they were at the start of the march. And, of course, with all these former slaves that are jamming up the rears, that's taking more food from an already massive, massive, massive army. And they're trying to keep this army on the march, which, of course, an army that's on the march, you could still feed them as long as you're in a fairly rich area as far as crops goes. But when that army stops, it will fastly deplete everything. And now when you add on the extra baggage of these slaves, now it's putting an even greater toll on Sherman. And it was bad. So when they crossed Ebenezer Creek, which is in South Georgia, it's not far from Savannah. I may actually later on go to Ebenezer Creek and do a video there. When they crossed Ebenezer Creek, they had pontoons. Well, once the army was across, you had this U.S. General Jefferson C. Davis, not to be confused with the Confederate President Jefferson Davis. And that's the 14th Army Corps. He hurried up and got them pontoons removed. And, of course, ex-slaves they didn't really. I mean, they were slaves. They didn't have a whole lot of leisure time to really go swimming. So, being that they weren't strong swimmers, a lot of them trying to get free jumped into this creek trying to cross it, and they drowned. Hundreds drowned. Now, I can understand ex-slaves wanting to become free. I'm pretty sure that they saw the Union Army as their saviors, which, no argument, they probably were. Some of the former slaves joined Sherman's army in the pioneer brigades, which means that they were to be used yet again for manual labor, cutting down trees, building roads, stuff that his white soldiers didn't want to do. And I mean, this is from Colonel Charles Kerr of the 16th Illinois Cavalry, and this is in a speech 20 years after this. As soon as we were over the creek, orders were given to the engineers to take the pontoons and not let a Negro cross. I sat upon my horse then and witnessed a scene the like of which I pray my eyes will never see again. Just before sunrise, the refugees cried out as their escape route was pulled away from them. Moments later, Wheeler's scouts rode up from behind and opened fire. Hundreds of refugees rushed forward into the icy current. Several Union soldiers on the eastern bank tried to help, pushing logs out to the few refugees still swimming. They were massacred by Joe Wheeler's cavalry. But they were let down by the Union. They were screwed by both sides. I mean, let's be honest. They were completely screwed by both sides. I'm sure, I'm sure Fighting Joe's cavalry was not that sympathetic to the escaped slaves. I mean, let's not BS here. I'm fairly certain that they were known as stolen property. I mean, even the Union side called former slaves contraband. So they weren't really regarded as humans more than they were regarded as property by either side. I'm not saying that that's the way that a lot of the northern run-of-the-mill soldiers felt. Half of them had never seen a black person in their lives. They didn't have slavery in Indiana. They didn't have slavery in Minnesota. And they get down south, and they're probably very sympathetic to the plight of the slaves. But they still have to follow orders. And they were ordered, don't let them cross. Don't let them jam up our rears. My opinion, this is one of the least talked about war crimes that Sherman's army was guilty of. Fast forward to 1948 when they had the Nuremberg trials, and I was just following orders. So that's why I killed so many Jews in the concentration camps. That wasn't a defense then. I don't think it's an active. It's a valid defense. Decades earlier, in 1864, either. Matter of fact, it's a fucking travesty. There's just no way around it. I'm thinking about doing an entire series on Sherman's war crimes during his march to the sea. Yes, it achieved its purpose. It did, cut the South in half and pin the Southern armies in between two great armies. The Army of the Potomac and Sherman's army. But I don't think that anybody can really justify the atrocities that happened. And again, I'm going to do another video at Ebenezer Creek at some point whenever I can get up there. It's not too far from me. I'm just outside of Jacksonville, Florida, so Savannah, Georgia is not that far of a drive. I'll get up there at some point, and I'll start doing some videos. I'm also going to do some other videos around here y'all can look forward to. I'm going to do one on the Masons at Alusty, which is the bloodiest battlefield in the state of Florida. There wasn't a whole lot of battles down here. Of course, not too many people lived here in Florida at the time. It was basically a wilderness because climate, and Florida being basically America's version of Australia, where a lot of things here will kill you. I'm also going to go down to St. Augustine and do one. I'm thinking about doing one at Fort Caroline. So I've got a lot of things planned. I want to get this channel up and active and start doing more historical stuff. So this is Anthony Allen, your host of History in the Eyes of a Southerner. And time to get this thing going to do what my original intent was. Thank y'all for watching. Y'all have a good day.